Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Clear Sky Productions here. I'm back once again. I know I haven't been on YouTube in a long time now because I've been incredibly busy. I am now working two jobs, or I actually have been for a while, but I'm working two jobs, and there's the book I'm writing on, which I've talked about that before in my past videos. So all things considered, I've been pretty busy. And I'm sorry that I have to return after all this time with, of all things, a politics video. I know, not the most welcoming thing you probably will find ever in your YouTube feed, but whatever. The midterm elections are 3 days from today. Today is November 5th, 2022, 1:03 p.m. Central. And I believe early voting, if I'm not mistaken, ended yesterday, but you can still vote, of course, on election day if you have not already voted. I already voted on the first day I was able to here in my home state of Texas. And let me just be clear, if you didn't vote already in early voting, and you haven't voted yet, I do strongly encourage you, vote on Tuesday, because this election, I should say, is way too important, in my opinion, not to vote. Now, who should you vote for? That's not up for me to decide. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. But if you haven't voted, vote, absolutely. Don't be like the people who are just going to be like, one vote doesn't matter. Or, I guess a more recent mindset would be, I hate all the candidates. You know what? You don't have to find a perfect candidate. If you only vote for perfect candidates, you'll never vote. Period. Just vote for whoever you believe will be the better governor. And if you have to, don't even read what political party they're from. Okay? Just don't even care what color platform they come from. Just, who's the better candidate? I'm sorry, I know this is ridiculously simple, but it seems like a lot of people don't get that, do they? Well, they're from that party, so I'm voting for them no matter what. Don't be that guy. Or woman, I guess. Okay, so with that out of the way, first off, vote. Second off, vote for whoever's better, not party, all that good stuff. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and get into these predictions there. Now, of course, these are, as I call them, predictions. This has nothing to do with who I want or don't want to win. This is merely how I expect these races to go. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. So I'm going to start, I guess, with the eastern states, work my way to the west. I guess that's just how the news does it. So I don't know. I guess I'm doing it the same way. Okay, so we're going to just go ahead and start up here with Maine. Maine. Now, it's funny, too. Okay, so I'm on 270towin.com, and I just realized you can change it to where you have all the different shades of red and blue and whatnot. Or just red and blue, kind of like this, or in between. I'm just going to do the red and blue. I'm not going to get into the whole, barely red or barely blue. That's too complicated for me. I'm not going to do that. It's just red, blue. That's it. Okay, so Maine. So Maine, we have the incumbent Paul LePage running against Republican Jana Mills. And this one, I mean, I know I said I wasn't going to get into the whole, shades of red and all, or shades of blue and all that stuff, and I'm not going to. I will say, I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I will expect LePage will get reelected in Maine. That's just how I think that's going to go. We'll see. Now, in Rhode Island, let's go ahead and look at that for a second. Okay, so Rhode Island, we have Dan McKee, incumbent Democrat, running against Ashley Collis. I'm sorry, if I'm mispronouncing any of these names, I'm really sorry. I have a really bad habit of mispronouncing people's names. Sorry. Anyway, Republican Ashley Collis, I think, is running against incumbent Dan McKee. Rhode Island, I do think will go blue. Connecticut, let's talk about that real quick. Connecticut, incumbent Democrat Ned Lamond is going to be running against Bob Stefanowski. Kind of a long name, sorry. But I do expect Connecticut will also go blue. Let's go ahead and go up to Massachusetts now. Now, Massachusetts is a little interesting. This is the only state in the entire election where the incumbent, in this case Charlie Baker, Republican, is not seeking re-election. But it's not because of, well, actually, there's plenty of states where the incumbent isn't seeking re-election. But in Massachusetts' case, it's because Charlie Baker is just not interested in seeking another term. Because as it turns out, Massachusetts does not have term limits, making Massachusetts the only state in this election where the incumbent is not running for re-election for a reason other than term limits. So he's not term limited. He could have run again if he wanted to. He's not. So Charlie Baker will not be running for re-election. That gives us Geoff Diehl. Sorry, I don't think I'm saying that right. Republican, running against Maura Healey, the Democrat, and I do expect Massachusetts is probably going to go blue. So I've got all blue states so far. Let's go ahead and move on now to New Hampshire and Vermont. So New Hampshire, we've got Tom Sherman, Democrat, running against Chris Sununu, I think. Oh my God. I know, the comments here make a lot of fun of me. It's okay. I'm fine with that. Anyway, I do think the incumbent is going to win in New Hampshire. And in Vermont, I do think incumbent Bill Scott is going to win re-election against Brandel Siegel. Sorry. I know I'm saying these names wrong. I just know it. Sorry. But it's okay. It's just a YouTube video. I'm not a Fox News or CNN host. Not a big deal. I don't care. Of course, Vermont and New Hampshire are the only states they have no term limits, and they are 2-year terms, not 4-year terms, which is kind of interesting, but it's how New England's shaping up so far. Let's go ahead and look at New York. New York's a really interesting state. Now, again, I know I'm not doing the whole light blue, light red thing here, but I do think New York is going to be a very, very close race. I am going to say that. New York, in my opinion, could actually be a state we don't know about on Tuesday night. I do think it's going to be close. Once it's all said and done, though, I do think New York is going to go blue. I think Kathy Hochul, I'm so sorry, is seeking re-election for a full term. She has yet to serve a full term since Andrew Cuomo resigned from office. I do think she is going to get in. Not by much, but I do think she's going to take down Republican challenger Lee Zeldin. Now, Maryland. Let's look at Maryland for a second. Now, incumbent Larry Hogan is term limited, so he will not be running for re-election. That gives us Republican Dan Cox against Democrat Wes Moore. And Maryland, I do think, it won't be as close as some people think, but I do think it's going to go blue. Wes Moore will be the new governor of Maryland. Now, Pennsylvania, we have, so it's another state like Maryland where Tom Wolf, the incumbent Democrat, is term limited. So that gives us Doug Mastrano? I'm sorry, Republican Doug Mastrano, or however you say his name, against Democrat Josh Shapiro, no relation to Ben Shapiro, the podcaster or whatever. No relation to him. But Pennsylvania, now from what I understand, Dougie, the Republican, is a pretty far-right Republican. Like, he's in the QAnon, and a bunch of the other, like, far-right conspiracy theories. That's not going to do him a lot of favors, I don't think, in Pennsylvania. That's why I do think it's going to go blue. If Pennsylvania had a moderate Republican candidate for governor, I think that'd be completely different. I do think Pennsylvania would have actually a pretty good shot at going red in that case, but because he's so far right and not at all or moderate that I'm aware of, I mean, surely anyone who believes in QAnon conspiracy theories isn't considered moderate right. I mean, whether you agree with it or not, but yeah, I don't think him being as far right as he is going to help him much in Pennsylvania. I do think it's going to go blue. Okay, now let's go to Ohio. So we've got Mike DeWine, the Republican incumbent, seeking re-election against challenger and Democrat Nay Whaley. And I do think Mike DeWine is going to win. Ohio has no signs of going blue. It didn't go blue in 2020. In fact, if anything, it got just barely more red, and that was when Joe Biden won. And there's no indication it's gotten more blue since then. So, yeah, Ohio is very safe for red, in my opinion. Mike DeWine's going to get in pretty easily. Okay, now we're going to go down and look at the Southeast. That's where we're going to go now. We'll get up to Michigan, Wisconsin. We'll do all that later. I'm going to go down here for now. Now let's go ahead and go to, this is a big one, albeit kind of predictable, Florida. We have Democrat Charlie Crist running against Republican Ron DeSantis, the incumbent. Charlie Crist did serve as governor previously, albeit as a Republican, not as a Democrat. He's Democrat to challenge Ron DeSantis. Now, this is a very big race. It's a very important race, but I don't hear a lot of coverage on it just because it's a very predictable race for a lot of people. Many people do expect Ron DeSantis to get reelected, and I have to second that. I do think Florida is a very safe state to go Republican, very similar to Ohio. Florida has no signs of going blue for the foreseeable future. If anything, it actually got more red between 2016 and 2020, believe it or not, despite Trump not winning re-election. And I have no reason to believe it's gotten more blue since 2020. Not at all. Florida's a very safe state to go red. Okay, now let's go up to South Carolina, another pretty easy state. Henry McMaster, Republican incumbent, going up against Joe Cunningham, the Democrat challenger. Pretty easy one. South Carolina, I think, is going to go red. Alabama, we have Yolanda Flowers running against the Republican incumbent Kay Ivey. Republican's another pretty straightforward one. Or, sorry, Alabama's a very straightforward one. Sorry. I think Kay Ivey's going to win re-election. Now, Georgia. Georgia's a very interesting state. Actually, you know what? Before I get to Georgia, let me cover Tennessee first, because Tennessee's another predictable one. Tennessee, Republican Bill Lee is going to run for re-election, and I think win against Democrat challenger Jason Martin. He'll get in for, I think, his second term it is. Now, Georgia. Georgia is going to be, I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to Georgia. Georgia's a state I'm very, very interested in for election night. Florida too, but again, Florida's so predictable, it's like I'm not really going to be watching it that carefully. But Georgia, though, is going to be a really interesting one to watch for. This one's going to be tougher. So we've got Brian Kemp, the incumbent, running against Stacey Abrams, the challenger, in a rematch of 2018. A very, very close race that Brian Kemp just barely won. I don't think he was incumbent at the time because I think Georgia has term limits, so if it was the incumbent, he'd be term limited this time around. I don't think that's the case, though. So incumbent Brian Kemp is running against Stacey Abrams again, and I do think he is going to prevail. It's not going to be by a huge margin, I don't think, but I do think it's going to be by a slightly bigger margin than 2018, just because of how the landscape has changed since 2018. I mean, in 2018, it was razor tight. And it's not going to be a blowout this time around, but I do think it's going to be a little bit safer red, just all things considered, because the 2018 elections were, after all, more in favor of the Democrats than they are this time around. So Brian Kemp, I do think, will fend off Stacey Abrams yet again. If she didn't win in a blue wave election year, I don't see how she's going to do it in a red wave election year. I just don't see that. Okay, so Alabama, Tennessee already covered. Let's go up to Illinois. Illinois is a pretty easy one, I think. I think it's going to go blue for J.B. Pritzker. No, Pritzker? Sorry. I'm so sorry. Democrat running against the Republican Darren Bailey. That's a pretty straightforward one. I don't see Illinois going red. I don't. Okay, so that gives us Michigan. Michigan's a really, really interesting one. So we've got the incumbent Gretchen Whitmer running against the Republican challenger Tudor Dixon. This is going to be another razor-tight state. Like New York, I don't think we're going to see this one called on Tuesday night, but I'm going to say it's a little bit of an upset. I'm going to say it goes red. I think Tudor Dixon is going to oust Gretchen Whitmer on this night. I think we're going to see an upset in Michigan. I don't know why. I'm just kind of leaning that way. Now, Wisconsin is another tricky one. This one is like, in the polls that I'm reading, like every poll I've read so far for Wisconsin is like a dead tie. Like Michigan's not deep blue, but barely blue. So Wisconsin. So if Michigan were to go red, would that mean Wisconsin goes red? So Tony Evers, the Democrat incumbent, running against challenger Tim Mitchells for the Republican Party. This is, if Michigan doesn't get called Tuesday night, Wisconsin's absolutely not going to get called Tuesday night either. I'm going to say it goes blue. Those are really, really, I know a lot of people are going to be watching Wisconsin and Michigan a lot. Yeah, that's my thoughts there. Wisconsin blue, Michigan red. I know that's probably backwards. Most people have this opposite, I think, but so I'm going to go with that. All right, Minnesota. We have Minnesota. We have Mike Lindell's home state. I wonder who he's voting for. So in Minnesota, we've got Tim Walz, I think is his name. I have a thing here. I think I misspelled his name as Talls. That I don't think that's his last name. Sorry, let me look up who is the incumbent for Minnesota governor. Tim Walz. Okay, yeah, I misspelled his name. Sorry about that. Anyway, so Tim Walz, the incumbent, running against Republican Scott Jensen. And I do think Minnesota is going to go blue. I know it's probably not the heaviest Democratic battleground out there, but I don't see it going red realistically either. One state I do see going red, though, is Iowa. We have the incumbent Kim Reynolds running against Democrat challenger Deidre DeGear. That one I know for a fact I'm not saying right. I can't be saying that right. I'm so sorry. But Yes, Iowa I do think is going to go red. It's like Ohio, like Florida. It's pretty solid Republican territory. Okay, so let's go down to Arkansas. So Arkansas, so incumbent Asa Hutchinson is term limited, so he's not running for re-election. We have Republican, this is interesting, Republican Sarah Huckabee Sanders running against Democrat Chris Jones. Who's going to succeed the term limited incumbent? It being Arkansas, I think Huckabee Sanders is going to be their governor. I know she's not an immensely popular candidate for either party, really, but do you really think Arkansas is going to go blue? I don't think it is. So if this were 2018 blue wave election year, I think Arkansas would actually be much closer, but as it stands, I think it's pretty safe for the Republicans. Okay, so let's go up to Texas, another big state, albeit also pretty predictable. I think Greg Abbott is going to get reelected for a third term over Beto O'Rourke. I mean, Beto is like, I know he's like, he's kind of a center stagist for the Democrats in Texas, but I think Texas going blue, especially in an election year like this, is wishful thinking. Greg Abbott, I know he's not immensely popular with Republicans, but he's not immensely unpopular either. And Beto O'Rourke just doesn't have a huge platform other than criticizing Greg Abbott. Not to say Greg Abbott's perfect, he's not. But what can Beto O'Rourke do better for the state? In my opinion, I don't think, and this is a problem he's had for a long time, he never comes up with a platform, I don't think, for himself as much as he does criticize other candidates. Not that there's anything wrong with criticizing other candidates, but you gotta do more than that. You gotta provide, like, why would you be a good governor, not just why is your opponent a bad governor or would be a bad governor. And I don't think he succeeded at that. And he couldn't even take out Ted Cruz in 2018. And Cruz is not that popular at all for either party, I don't think. He's definitely more unpopular than Greg Abbott. That I know for a fact. In a blue wave election, didn't get it, and he whiffed it in the 2020 presidential race. So yeah, Beto, I'm sorry, not a chance for Beto, I don't think. Texas is going to be pretty red for the foreseeable future. Even more so in Oklahoma, we have Kevin Stitt, the Republican incumbent, running against Joy Hoffmeister. Sorry. He's going to get in pretty easily. That's very safe for Oklahoma. Now, Kansas is very interesting, too. Kansas and Georgia, I think, are the two most interesting, in my opinion. So we have Laura Kelly, the Democrat incumbent, running against challenger Derek Schmidt for the Republican Party. Now, for a long time, I used to think that Laura Kelly was going to get ousted. That's still possible, but then again, there was that abortion. There's some kind of a election for an abortion measure not that long ago that Kansas surprisingly voted overwhelmingly in favor of. So this is going to be a very, very close race, but I'm going to say just barely, not a blowout at all. I'm going to say it goes blue again. I think Laura Kelly will get reelected. Brings us up to Nebraska. Incumbent Pete Rickens is term limited, so that gives us Carol Blood for the Republicans and Jim Pellin for the Democrats. This is a pretty easy one. I think it's safe for the Republicans. South Dakota, I think Kristi Noem, the Republican incumbent, is going to easily defeat Jamie Smith, the Democrat, in South Dakota. Two very easy states, in my opinion. Okay, New Mexico, another very interesting state. The incumbent, sorry, hang with me here, Michelle Lujan Grisham? I know I'm going to get roasted for mispronouncing these names. I am so sorry. But the Democrat incumbent running against Mark Rossetti for the Republicans. And I do expect New Mexico will go blue again. Kind of a straightforward one. Even more straightforward is Colorado. Jared Polis will easily get back in over Republican challenger Heidi Ganahl. Jared Polis, I think, is absolutely going to get reelected. That's very safe territory for the Democrats in Colorado. Wyoming, very safe territory for the Republicans. Mark Gordon over the Republican incumbent over Democratic challenger Teresa Livingston. Arizona. So incumbent Doug Ducey's term limited. He's not getting back in. So we've got Democrat Katie Hobbs against Republican Kari Lake. And this is a very, very close state, but I do think it is going to lean red for Kari Lake. This Arizona could be another race we don't see called for a couple days maybe, but or not on Tuesday night at least. But we got that. Idaho, we've got Brad Little, the Republican incumbent, over Stephen Haidt. Very safe territory for the Republicans is in Idaho. Brad Little's going to be reelected. Now Nevada, another interesting state. Nevada, I'm going to say Nevada. So, okay, first off, we have incumbent Steve Sisolak, the incumbent Democrat, running against Joe Lombardo, the Republican. And you know what? I'm going to say Nevada goes red. Close state? Close state. This could go either way, but I think it's going to go red. Oregon is another surprisingly battleground state. But before I get to Oregon, though, I'm going to save Oregon for last because these last three states here are kind of predictable. So California, we have Gavin Newsom, their incumbent Democrat, over Brian Dahl, the Republican, and this one is pretty easy. It's going to go blue. I do think Gavin Newsom will get reelected for another term. No reason to think it will go otherwise. California is pretty safe Democrat territory. As is Hawaii, we have... Actually, wait, where's Hawaii? Okay, sorry. Gotta find some notes here. So Josh Green is the Democrat candidate for governor. I think he's going to get elected this time over Republican challenger Duke Olona. By the way, the incumbent David Ige, however you say his last name, I actually don't know, is term limited. He's not running for re-election. Now in Alaska, this is interesting. In Alaska, we have 4 candidates. Republican Mike Dunleavy, the incumbent, Democrat challenger Les Gara, Independent Bill Walker, and another Republican, Charlie Pierce. And it's going to go red specifically for the incumbent Mike Dunleavy, not the other guy who seems like barely anyone knows him. I don't think he's going to win. I think the incumbent is going to win in Alaska. And so last but not least, we have Oregon. So Oregon has 3 candidates, the only one of 2 states besides Alaska that has more than 2 main candidates on the ballot, as far as I know, anyway. And so in Oregon, we have... Okay, so first off, the incumbent, Kate Brown, is term limited, not running for re-election. Now, Oregon, surprisingly, like I said, is a battleground state, which is why I saved it for last. So we've got Tina Kotek, the Democrat candidate, Republican candidate Christine Drazin, and Independent Betsy Johnson. Now, I don't think... Oregon, I think, is going to be a pretty close state. I do ultimately, though, think it is going to go blue. I think Tina Kotek is going to be the governor of Oregon. Close state, closer than some people probably want it to be, maybe, but that's how I think it's going to go. So there you have it, folks. That concludes all the states. I have covered every state here. This is who I think is going to win. Has no reflection at all on who I want or don't want to win. It's who I want to win. That's it. Nothing else. So there you have it, folks. This is my predictions for the governor races of this year. Hope you guys liked it. I know a lot of you probably didn't, but whatever. That's just how it is. This is Clear Sky Productions. Thank you as always for watching. And once again, I will remind you, if you have not voted already, absolutely don't hesitate to vote. Come Tuesday, I know the lines will be kind of long because, Tuesday lines are usually longer than early voting. That's why I went early voted. So if you did not get to early vote, by all means, get out and vote. That's all. This is Clear Sky Productions, and until next time, this is Clear Sky Productions, signing off. Thank you, and good evening.